The knock wasn't polite. It was the kind that shook the old screen door, rattling the hinges like it owed someone money. Walter didn't flinch. He stood at the stove, pouring black coffee into a chipped ceramic mug. The morning sun was just beginning to cut through the low clouds that rolled off the Ozarks, bathing the fields in golden mist. Another knock, louder this time. He sighed, set the mug down and opened the door. 3 men stood there, not from around here. The tallest one wore mirrored sunglasses even though the sky was still grey. The youngest had a tattoo of a skull on his neck, half hidden by the collar of a fake leather jacket. The third, silent, stocky, stared at Walter like he was already dead. "You Walter Langston?" the one in the middle asked. "I am," Walter said, voice steady, eyes cold. "You own that land down by the South Creek?" "It's been in my family for generations." "Well," the man smirked, "we're buying it now." Walter didn't answer. "You don't get it, old man," the tattooed one jumped in. "This ain't a negotiation." Walter looked past them at the pickup idling on the dirt road. Black Ford, plates from Texas, no one local. "Cartel?" he asked plainly. "Smart," said the leader, "but not smart enough to take this seriously." The young one stepped forward, finger in Walter's face. "You either sign the deed over, or next week, something burns. Maybe your barn, maybe your dog, maybe your house with you in it." Walter nodded slowly as if thinking it over. "You boys ever been shot before?" They laughed. All 3. Walter stepped aside. "Come in. Let's talk." The men glanced at each other, surprised. The leader shrugged. "Let's make this quick." Inside, the farmhouse was neat. Faint smell of tobacco and old wood. A framed photo on the wall showed a younger Walter in military fatigues, standing beside a black Camaro. The tattooed one snorted. "Nice antique." Walter walked to the bookshelf, pulled down an old wooden box and opened it. Inside, a single object gleamed, a .45. He turned, pointed it at the youngest one's face. The click of the hammer froze time. "You came to the wrong damn house." No one moved. Walter's voice didn't rise, didn't shake. "You think I'm just some farmer? You have no idea what I used to be." The silence in the farmhouse was suffocating. The leader's smirk vanished. The youngest's eyes darted toward the door, calculating a move he'd never get to make. Walter's finger stayed on the trigger, steady. "I was 16 when I killed my first man," Walter said, voice low. "Not proud of it, but I got good at it. Real good." The older one's sunglasses slid down his nose. He studied Walter differently now. "I don't want blood on my floor today," Walter continued. "So here's how this goes. You're gonna leave. You're gonna tell whoever sent you this land is off limits. And if I see that black Ford again, I'll bury it under the south field, where no one will ever find it." The leader raised his hands slowly. "Okay, we didn't know. You didn't ask." The .45 didn't waver until the last boot cleared the porch. Walter watched them jog to the truck, slam the doors and peel off down the dirt road, tailpipe spitting gravel. Only then did he lower the weapon, breathing deep. He went back inside and sat at the kitchen table. The coffee was cold now. Still, he drank it. A man doesn't live as long as Walter without learning to stomach the bitter. Minutes later, he pulled a heavy binder from the bottom drawer of an old desk. It had no label, no markings, just dust. Inside, newspaper clippings, mugshots, maps with circles in red ink, faces, names, dates, cases never solved, lives ended. Most people in town only knew Walter Langston as the quiet old man with the best tomatoes in the county. But back in the 70s and 80s, he was someone else. Someone the FBI chased for 13 years and never caught. Not officially. Because in '89, he disappeared. Disappeared into a different name, a different state, a forgotten town. Until now. Walter ran a hand over one photo in the binder. A man with a serpent tattoo coiled around his neck. Ramiro Juarez, cartel enforcer, Texas connection, thought to be dead. Walter muttered, "Guess the past doesn't stay buried forever." Out in the fields, wind stirred the wheat. The morning mist had lifted, but the threat hadn't. They would come back. And when they did, Walter knew he'd have to become himself again. Not the old man in overalls, but the ghost the underworld used to whisper about. By noon, Walter was out by the barn, sharpening the edge of a rusted hoe. Not because he needed it for farming, but because the rhythm of steel on stone calmed his hands. From the road, you'd never know the tool shed behind his barn had a false wall, or that behind that wall, sealed in a plastic-wrapped duffel, was the life he had sworn never to touch again. Passports, burner phones, a Cuban cigar tin full of untraceable cash, and a 9mm tucked into an old military belt. Back then, he wasn't Walter Langston. He was Ray Dalton, bank robber, gun runner, the man who stole from cartels and sold to their enemies. The man who once disappeared an entire crew of Sicilian enforcers off a dock in Miami. To the feds, he was a myth, until a raid gone sideways put a bullet in his leg and forced him underground. Fake death, new identity, new life. But the cartel had long memories, and the name Dalton still echoed in certain dark corners. Inside the shed, Walter stared at a map pinned to the back wall. The roads around town, the old creek trails no one but locals used. He marked the spot where the black Ford had parked that morning. If they'd done any homework, they'd be back. Not just with threats, but with firepower. He wasn't going to wait for that. That evening, he drove into town in his rusted Dodge, parked behind the feed store, and walked the back alleys to a diner only the old-timers still frequented. The waitress, Shirley, silver curls and cigarette breath, nodded at him. "Hey, Walt, your usual?" "Just coffee." He sat at the counter and waited. A few minutes later, a man slid into the seat beside him. Mid-50s, thick beard, scar across his eyebrow. "Didn't expect to hear from you again," the man muttered. "Didn't expect to make the call," Walter replied. "Cartel. Texas plates, young, sloppy, but not stupid. They'll come back smarter." The man grunted. "How deep you in this?" "They stepped on my land, threatened me in my own home." "You're calling in the old crew?" Walter sipped his coffee. "Not all of them. Just the ones who still know how to keep a secret." A long pause. "You think you can still do this, Walt?" He looked up, eyes hard as gravel. "I don't think. I know." The next day, the sky sat low and heavy over the farm. Clouds like bruises hung over the fields. Walter stood in the shed again, flipping through an old leather notebook he hadn't touched in almost 2 decades. It was his Firestarter file, a record of debts, favors, secrets, the kind of leverage that never aged. He stopped on one name, Clint Morrow. Last known location, Tulsa. Former demolitions expert, ex-military, discharged after a situation in Fallujah that never made the news. Walter had saved him once, gotten Clint out of a dirty federal sting in exchange for silence and loyalty. That debt was still unpaid. Walter picked up the burner phone and dialed. It rang once, twice. "Yeah," came the gravel-rough voice. "It's Dalton." Silence. "I need a clean drop in 72 hours. Surveillance gear, small arms, you know the kind." Clint didn't ask questions. "Address?" "Same farm, Southgate." Click. Call ended. Walter slid the phone back into the tin. Outside, the wind had picked up, rustling the wheat like restless whispers. He scanned the horizon. No dust trails. Not yet. Inside the house, he sat with the old binder again. His eyes landed on a recent news article, clipped from a Spanish-language paper. A small-time Texas cartel, the kind that dealt in fentanyl and fear, had been expanding, stretching into Missouri, Oklahoma, parts of Arkansas. The leader, Tobias Juarez, Ramiro's younger brother. That explained everything. The Juarez family had always operated like snakes, strike first, slither later. If they'd tracked Walter down, it wasn't just about land, it was about legacy, revenge. They must have dug just deep enough to find whispers of Dalton without realizing who they were actually dealing with. That was their mistake. He walked into the bedroom, opened a locked footlocker at the base of the bed. Inside, a faded photo of a woman. Dark hair, warm eyes. She was the reason he'd buried the past. Walked away. She was gone now, 10 years this winter. But Walter whispered to the picture anyway. "I might not come back from this one, Em." He strapped the 9mm under his coat, took a long look at the mirror. A face carved by time, but still hard, still dangerous. The man he once was, Ray Dalton, was no longer buried. He was wide awake. It was just after midnight when the dog started barking. Walter sat up in bed, already awake. His instincts hadn't dulled, they just slept deeper now. He grabbed the pistol from the nightstand, loaded and ready, and slipped on his boots without turning on the light. The barking had shifted from warning to panic. Outside, the wind had died. The air was too still, like the world was holding its breath. He crept down the hall, bypassing the creaky floorboards. At the window, he saw it. 2 figures moving low through the wheat, not from town. One had a machete strapped to his back, the other a long gun. They weren't here to talk. Walter didn't hesitate. He slipped out the back, past the rusted silo, and into the line of trees where shadows ran deep. From this angle, he had a clear view of the field and the porch. They were splitting up, rookie mistake. One made his way toward the dog pen, the other circled wide toward the front door. Walter moved like he had in jungles half a world away, silent, swift, deadly. The first man reached the pen. Walter was behind him before the guy even noticed. The muzzle of the .45 touched the back of his skull. "You make a sound, and you die without knowing why," Walter whispered. The man froze. Walter disarmed him fast, tying his hands with the dog's leash and dragging him into the shadows. The second man wasn't as lucky. He crept onto the porch, gun raised. Walter appeared behind the screen door like a ghost. One shot, silent, precise, hit him in the leg. The man screamed, dropped the weapon, and rolled down the steps. Walter stepped out slowly, pistol still raised. "You think I didn't know you'd come back?" he said. "You idiots act like this is your first job." The man on the ground groaned in Spanish. No sabíamos quién eras." Walter looked down at him, jaw clenched. "No, you didn't, but your boss will." He dragged both men into the barn, secured, taped, silent. Then he pulled out his phone. This time he didn't call Clint. He called her. The number rang 4 times. A woman's voice answered. "I hoped I'd never hear from you again." Walter said just 4 words. "They're already here, Sasha." She didn't reply, but he knew she'd come. She always did. By sunrise, the fog was thick again, clinging to the earth like a second skin. Walter stood at the edge of the field, watching the gravel road disappear into white. He didn't turn when he heard the engine, just nodded. A matte gray Jeep rolled up slow, tinted windows, no plates. It stopped 10 feet from him. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the driver's door opened. She stepped out. Tall, lean, black tactical boots, aviator shades. Her hair was shorter now, dyed darker. Same sharp jawline, same air of command. She carried a rifle case like it was part of her body, silent, focused. "Sasha," Walter said quietly. "Ray." That name. She still used it. She was one of the few allowed to. They didn't hug. Didn't need to. "You look older," she said. "You look meaner." "I am." She walked past him toward the house. He followed. Inside, Sasha didn't ask questions. She opened the case, assembled the rifle, smooth, practiced, quiet. Suppressed 308, custom scope, laser rangefinder, all hers. Walter briefed her with clipped details while boiling coffee. The 2 men were still in the barn, gagged, wrists zip-tied, one bleeding from a shattered kneecap. "Recon team," Sasha muttered, not impressed. "Too green, not cartel grade." Walter nodded. "Juarez is testing the fence." Seeing how loud the dogs bark before he kicks the gate in, Sasha glanced up. "Then we kill the dog before he gets the chance." He smirked. "You haven't changed." She loaded the rifle. "Neither have you." By noon, Clint arrived. His truck was dusty, dented and heavy with crates, gear, cameras, comms, claymores. A setup like that used to cost tens of thousands. Now, it cost favors. Favors Walter had earned the hard way. They went to work, motion detectors along the east fence, tripwires at the rear field. Drone surveillance from the silo roof. It wasn't just a farm anymore. It was a trap. Walter stood on the porch that night, hands deep in his coat pockets, staring at the horizon. Behind him, Sasha cleaned the rifle. Clint was wiring the barn. "They'll come tonight," Walter said quietly. Sasha joined him. "Then they'll learn what we used to be." Walter exhaled through his nose. "No. They'll learn what we still are." And in that moment, the quiet farm in Missouri was no longer a place to grow corn. It was ground zero. At 2:47 a.m., the first motion sensor tripped. Walter was already awake. He lay still in the dark, eyes open, listening. One chirp, then another. East field, then south fence. The pattern was deliberate. 2 points of entry, distraction, classic maneuver. He rose calm as ever and moved through the house in silence. Sasha was already at the window with the scope scanning. Clint's voice crackled in from the barn, low through the comms. "5 targets, maybe 6. Moving tight, military walk. These aren't locals," Walter responded. "Don't engage until I say." He stepped out onto the back porch and flipped a switch. The low hum of the generator kicked in, and floodlights lit the fields. Just enough light to outline the shadows. That's when the gunfire started. Short bursts, controlled. Someone panicked too early. Clint triggered the first trap, tripwire on the south gate. A flashbang sent 2 men to the ground, dazed. Sasha took the shot, one down, clean to the temple. The others scrambled. Walter moved through the field like a wraith, using the rows of corn for cover. He found the youngest, barely out of his 20s, holding an Uzi like he was in a movie. Walter disarmed him with a strike to the throat, brought the butt of his pistol down hard on the boy's skull. 3 down. From the silo, the drone feed caught movement toward the barn. "They're trying to breach the east wall," Clint barked. "They won't make it," Sasha said. She was right. Claymores weren't fatal at the angle she'd set them, but they screamed, "You're not welcome," louder than any words. Shrapnel tore through the night, metal and dirt flying. One attacker crawled away bleeding, another didn't move. The last man standing tried to run, back toward the tree line. Walter caught him by the jacket just as he reached the fence. "Tell Juarez," Walter growled, dragging him to his knees. "I'm not hiding anymore." The man nodded frantically. Walter let him go. A message needed a messenger. By 3:15 a.m., it was over. 6 men neutralized. No injuries on their side. Blood on the soil, smoke in the air. Back in the house, Clint poured whiskey into 3 coffee mugs. "Like old times," he muttered. "No," Walter said, voice hard. "This time, it's personal." Sasha raised her mug. "Then let's finish it." The sun rose slow over Langston Farm, streaking red through the smoke still hanging low in the fields. Blood, gunpowder, sweat. It all smelled like memory. Walter sat on the porch, rifle across his lap, eyes on the gravel road. Clint was by the barn checking the remaining traps. Sasha cleaned her weapon in silence. No one spoke. Not yet. At 7:03 a.m., a black SUV crept into view. Just one. It rolled to a stop 50 yards out, engine idling. The door opened. A man stepped out. Sharp suit, gold watch, no visible weapon. But the way he moved told Walter he wasn't afraid of dying. That kind of calm only came from men who'd seen too much. Tobias Juarez, younger than Ramiro had been. Colder. Walter stood. Sasha joined him. Juarez walked a few paces forward, then stopped. "You're Dalton," he called out. Walter didn't respond. "I knew the stories weren't just legends. My brother used to tell me about you like you were the devil." Walter stepped off the porch, boots crunching the dirt. "You came all this way for revenge?" he asked. Juarez shook his head. "I came to finish something my family started. And maybe to understand why my men are afraid of an old man with a shovel." Walter stopped 20 feet away. "Close enough." "I'm not what I used to be," he said. "Could have fooled me," Juarez replied, glancing at the field stained red. Walter narrowed his eyes. "You've got 2 choices. Leave this state and never come back, or I make this your grave too." Juarez smiled faintly. "You think this ends with you killing me?" "No," Walter said. "It ends with you realizing I let you live." A pause. Then Juarez nodded. I never expected mercy from a ghost. He turned, walked back to the SUV and drove away. No shots, no last words, just dust in the wind. Back on the porch, Clint lit a cigarette. That it? Walter sat back down, the rifle resting beside him. For now, he said, but the land's safe. Sasha leaned on the post beside him. Until the next one comes. Walter nodded. When they do, he said, we'll be ready. The three of them sat in silence, watching the wheat sway with the morning breeze. Old legends, still breathing, still dangerous, still home.